250.
Greetings, everyone. It is Helen Hart Smith from the Heart of the Witch's Path YouTube channel, and I am here with
Kathy.
Hey, we are here with episode 215. We're sneaking in one more podcast before the end of the year.
If you get it posted.
Yeah. Hey, quit with the subliminal something or whatever you call it.
No, we're positive self-speaking.
Yeah.
You will get it posted by the end of the year.
Thank you. There we go.
You will.
We are here with a fly by the seat of our pants podcast.
Well, yeah.
As we normally are.
Wait, when is it not fly by the seat of our pants?
Well, guys, I'm going to be completely honest with you right now. We are totally crafting right now for another crazy love affair that we have together.
Yeah, so then we're sitting here and we come upon this topic and we start talking about it and we're like, hey, we should podcast this.
So here we are.
So here we are podcasting this.
So, but before that, we got to business. What's the business? It's time for Correspondence of the Week. And this one, we're going down and dirty and quick because like we said, this is
totally unplanned.
Yeah, this is a conversation that we're just going to record. So, that being said, this week's correspondence is we're going to go a little down home. We're going to go a little hoodoo maybe. Some might consider it. But we're talking about the cranberry bean today. I will have y'all know that I didn't even know that a cranberry bean existed until just a couple of months ago when I saw them at my local Horrocks store, which is an awesome place. Awesome place. And so we actually used cranberry beans in a craft that we did for Crafty Craft Day this year. And so the cranberry bean is about the size and shape of a kidney bean. But it's really pretty. It's got kind of like a beigey skin that has like red spots or designs or whatever in it. So, and I think it's known as maybe an October bean too. So anyhow, this bean is good for attracting new opportunities.
Which is good for this time of year.
Right. We thought that would be a really good thing. So we used it in a home blessing bulb. And so you can use it for that kind of a thing, or
you can eat it.
You can eat it. Yeah, you can definitely cook with it. I bought dried ones, and I actually used it in a soup recipe.
Delicious.
And two different soup recipes. I need a new piece. Let's just say that.
Okay, I'll give you a new piece.
So we're crafting. So that is, that's a really awesome way to use the cranberry bean. So, there's a little down home and dirty.
Yeah, if I could get my phone to open. And we could, do some sounds.
Dude, yeah, we're a hot mess today.
Yep.
So that's the correspondence of the week.
Wow. Let me just say that this week has been freaking insane, and I'm so glad that Christmas is over and
yes,
all of the holidays, and we'll just leave it there.
Yeah, we've just got New Year's to get through, and yeah, I don't know about you, but I'm kind of looking forward to 2017, and hopefully it's less crazy.
2016 sucked ass. Okay, so on to our topic.
Yeah. So we wanted to talk about
kind of a two-part topic.
Yeah, because that's what kind of started the conversation. So we wanted to talk about our feelings on what we're not even sure what to call it. So we came up with our own description because we couldn't even really find anything online.
Because there's a term for it. It's kind of a controversial topic, at least part of our topic today. And I could not find any. I know I've seen articles on it before, but I could not find them when I went looking.
Right. So it's linked with cultural appropriation. And I know that, like Kathy said, there's been some issue with cultural appropriation. And by that, we mean when you take bits from another culture that is not your own and you incorporate it into your culture. So some folks might consider a white person with dreadlocks having culturally appropriated that from African American society. And there are some folks that are really against that, and there are some folks that think it shouldn't be a big deal. And I don't want to get into the cultural stuff. You know, we're pretty much a faith-based thing here. So what we're looking at is religious appropriation. And
so that basically means that if you're not Middle Eastern, say, but you choose to become a Muslim, or you're not further east and you choose to become follow Confucius, or
right, or if you're not Native American and you want to follow a Native American practice,
right? And
so, what does that mean? What are our feelings on it? And do we think that it's okay? It's not okay? That's kind of some of the things that we're going to touch on.
So that's half our topic. What's our other half?
The other half is, how do you deal with
someone who is learning a new path, who has learned a lot of stuff in their other paths that sort of apply to the new path, but a lot of it not really? And how do you help them to learn the new path when a lot of it is similar, but a lot of it is not?
And should you... I don't ever want to tell anybody that they shouldn't broaden their knowledge.
Because that's what we do all the time. Everybody should broaden their knowledge.
Right, because Kathy and I, we've actually studied quite a few different Wicca paths.
I would call it pagan paths, because some of them are not necessarily Wiccan.
Okay. What do you think isn't Wiccan?
Hoodoo is not Wiccan. Okay, so
I don't consider myself hoodoo.
Well, no, but we've taken classes on it and we've learned things about it. And we've used some of their techniques ourselves. Even though we do not follow hoodoo as a religion, we still have religiously appropriated some of it into our practices.
Right. And I guess the first thing is that, there's a perception, because I guess part of me thinks, why isn't that Wiccan?
Because Wiccan, if you go by the definition, and it depends on what form of Wicca that you go by, but it's do no harm no matter what. So you're not cursing, you're not binding, you're not doing any of that stuff at all, ever. Where hoodoo, screw that. Somebody screws you over, you're going to bind them, you're going to curse them, you're going to wish them ill luck. And that is not by the book definition of Wicca.
Well, okay, so let me ask you this then. Do you consider Dorothy Morrison a witch? Or do you consider her Wiccan, or do you consider her stuff hoodoo?
Well, okay, I think we need to back up a little bit. So I believe all Wiccans are witches, but not all witches are Wiccan. Just like each of those are all pagan, but not all pagans are witches or Wiccans.
Right.
So I think that Dorothy goes more into the hoodoo aspect of it, the down south, down and dirty, binding, cursing. And I don't know if she would consider herself to be Wiccan.
Yeah, I would be interested in that, because I know that, she does.
She would I'm sure she considers herself a witch, but I'm not sure that she considers herself Wiccan.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm trying to figure out, should we try to organize this conversation at all, or should we just let ourselves go?
Well, so let's start with I think we should start with the appropriation thing. So So the reason that people have a big problem with this is because they believe that you should not practice any kind of magic that is not from your DNA. So if you're not Native American, you should not learn or practice Native American spirituality. If you don't have ancestors in Russia, you should not practice Russian shamanism. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Did I define that correctly?
I think you're okay for the moment.
Okay. So there's two theories of belief on this, and one is that, yeah, you absolutely should not do anything other than your DNA.
Well, I think that should not is a really hard word. And maybe that's where I'm...
Well, some people believe you absolutely should not. It's absolutely... If you're not from that culture, if you weren't born into that, if you don't have ancestors from that, then you should stay away from it. You should only practice what your DNA can be traced back to.
Right, but there are also some that, there are some folks that have claimed that, because let's face it, in the New Age movement that's happened in recent decades, there's been a lot of things that have come out of Eastern religions and philosophy and things like that, and people practicing things like Taoism and
Right.
and Buddhism and things like that because they claimed that they couldn't find those types of needs, what was fulfilling their needs within, Caucasian.
That's the other side of the argument. One is that you should never practice anything that your ancestry does not allow for, and the other is that you should practice what calls to your spirit.
Well, right, but there are some folks, let me finish my thought.
Okay.
There are some folks that are saying that, okay, if Taoism speaks to you, that's cool, but did you know that there is this or there is that fits your ancestral origins?
Right, because let's be realistic. If you follow anybody back far enough in history, you're going to hit somebody who practiced some form of paganism, some form of shamanism, because that's in everybody's history if you go back far enough.
So that, I guess I don't want us to come off as sounding like we're saying, first of all, we are not saying that this is how we feel.
Oh, hell no.
And that there are varying perspectives of, where people are coming from when it comes to religious appropriation. So I guess that's kind of what I was wanting to kind of get out when I was saying that should is a really harsh word.
Right, but some people do feel that way.
Right. So, okay. So that was kind of a long way of getting through
Getting the disclaimer that we're not saying that.
Right. So, So as far as like, do you want to talk about your thoughts?
Damn it. Sorry, I screwed up. There's a couple of different ways to look at it, in my opinion. The first is that, really, unless you go into some remote areas, we're all freaking mutts, okay? Really. We do a DNA test. We're rarely going to find that we're all Eastern European or we're South African or whatever. It's not going to happen. So,
okay.
So to limit yourself to what you think is your ancestry, to me, is kind of ridiculous.
Well, unless that's your calling. I mean,
if that's your calling, that's fine. But to force yourself to be limited to what you feel is your cultural background, you can Google it. There's all kinds of people who have taken DNA tests and they went, oh, I had no idea I was part German. I had no idea I was part, Malaysian or whatever. You don't know what's in your history because, shit changes and people move and
records are lost.
Records are lost. you don't really know what your DNA is unless you actually take a DNA test.
True.
So then the other part of my, are you kidding me, argument against being against cultural appropriation is I believe in reincarnation, and I believe that people come back as people, but you don't come back, if you were Russian in a past life, you're not necessarily going to be reborn as a Russian. You could be reborn as a Native American. You could be reborn as a South American. So why should you have to limit yourself to the religion your parents were, your grandparents, if in a previous life you were a Taoist? Why should you have to limit yourself for that?
That makes sense to me.
I mean, not everybody believes in reincarnation, and that's fine, but it's a possibility and it's out there, and why should you limit yourself? Although there are some people who believe that they reincarnate within their bloodline, but
well, and I guess another kind of I'm trying to play devil's advocate and think about other things, and I guess some people could say, yeah, you might have all these possibilities or whatever you for past lives if that's something that they believe in. However, this life is separate from that. And in this life, there are people that do know what their heritage is, and they, there are family lines out there that, especially now with the advent of websites like Ancestry.com, it's very possible to know, and I think there's a lot of people that are interested in their line of ancestors. I know that I'm interested in mine. And so, I can trace back 2 of my 4 family lines quite far. And so there are some that might argue, and I'm just going to throw this out there, that, this life is very much about this person as Helen, this person as Kathy. And yes, you could have those past life experiences, but this life is about this family and who this person is in this line of family. And, they could come with the thought process that, I have a strong family lineage and that's what I want to respect, is that, that family lineage.
Yeah, but that's all very personal. And if you feel that strong calling to follow what your family lineage is, the religion of your family lineage, then that's great. Do it. But if you don't, why should you be limited to, for most of us, Christianity, just because our parents and grandparents were Christians?
Well, and I mean, I don't think that Christianity really limits either, because if you look lineage-wise, like you mentioned earlier, there's paganism that is in every area, because, I mean, Christianity has only been around for 2,000 years. Exactly.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't think that, we're completely blocked by Christianity as a culture, as saying that, we're, just because I'm white and from America, I have to be Christian.
Right, but to go back far enough, you said you could trace your history back. I know I can trace my mother's family back to the Revolutionary War. So, theoretically, they were Christian at that time because, well, everybody was. But, so then, that's as far as we've been able to trace back. Where were the pagan ancestors? Were they from Germany? Were they from Ireland?
Well, can you take your family line back?
Well, that's as far
to its origins.
That's as far back as it goes. That the history that we have, it's to just before the Revolutionary War. So, and that doesn't count all of the families that married in. That is only counting the Allen family line.
Right. So do you don't know what country of origin that family came from?
I think it was Wales, but then I know that there are some well, they call it Pennsylvania Dutch, but it's really somewhere on the Netherlands. Mm-hmm. But again, I mean, yes.
So that takes you back to Europe, essentially.
Right.
And there's different regions in Europe and stuff like that. But in my family line, I know that one line goes to Germany. Mm-hmm. I know that's the third line goes. I know the family. I know the ancestor that came to America. And so I know that they're from, I know where at in Germany and all that kind of stuff. And then the other lines, we go back to Spain in one. We go back to Germany in another. So there's a double German line. There's Welsh in there, which of course is Celtic in early historical stuff. And stuff like that. So, I mean, for me, I know some European geographical stuff that can kind of give me some insight into things.
Well, the thing with Spain, though, is a lot of that goes further east. A lot of people came out of the Middle East,
right,
fleeing from various things to go to Spain. And so that could be a Jewish history. That could be
and we're specifically from the Basque region, and there is a whole set of gods in pantheon there that I've started to do some research on. So kind of bringing it back to the topic at hand. For me, as someone who is interested in my familial origins, that doesn't. I don't necessarily. I'm not for or against. I don't know how I feel very gray about this, which is something.
Well, again, I think it's a very personal issue. If you feel that you are called to follow your family lineage, religion, however far back that goes, then that's great for you. But if you're called to do something else, then you should do whatever you feel called to do.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and I know that that I have, so kind of expanding on that a little bit, I have always had an affinity, and I believe that there is native blood within my family, but we just can't prove it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
So I've always had a leaning towards that. I studied Native studies in college. And things like that. I went to college at a university that was close to a reservation and stuff. So I had some really interesting religious experiences there. But I know, and so I know that I could participate if I wanted to. But there. Something changed in where I was being drawn, and so, I kind of, it's a part of who I am. It just didn't make up a huge chunk of my religious belief or something.
Right. Not that there's not, okay, there are many similarities in many pagan beliefs, including Native American.
Right. Oh, so where I was going with this was, I think it was that shamanic. No.
No, you cannot get on the painted stuff.
That's where I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
Because, I was interested in that shamanic aspect, and now I'm finding that with Germany and the Germanic ties and the Slavic ties and things like that, that there is shamanism that is a part of what I know to be my ancestral lineage. And so, like, an argument that I've heard is that, I started talking about the same thing about Eastern religions, was that, that there was mind spaces and things like that were a part of these Eastern traditions that there was one specific person that I was listening to podcasts that he followed. But then he realized that, hey, I can find similar teachings that are a part of my ancestral background.
Right.
And so that spoke more to him than continuing to practice these Eastern
practices,
philosophies. So that's a possibility.
Right.
So,
and I feel that you should never close yourself off from learning something new, because there's always a possibility that you can find something that speaks to your heart more than what you're doing now, or can add to what you're doing now.
Right. And I think that to be a good student
or teacher,
I have a specific thought.
Okay.
In order to be a good student, I think that you have to be respectful of the process. Okay? And if, for example, because I know that it's a hot topic, or it can be a hot topic, I know that that there are many Native tribes out there, Native American tribes, that do not agree with quote unquote white folks practicing their religion. They think that it's blasphemy. They think that it is a slap in the face. They think that it is just like one of the biggest taboo things possible.
The whites spent so many generations trying to wipe out Native Americans.
Yeah, and for whatever reason, I mean, if you've got that mindset, and as I'm a white girl, there's no doubt. I remember making friends with my Native friends in classes, and we kind of had jokes about it afterwards. That they'd be like, they would be seriously like, what's this white girl doing here? Kind of a thing, because I do not look Native, but there was something about the Native religion that called to me.
Thanks, Noah.
And so when I talk about being respectful, there's a lot that can be learned from a book. And that's cool. But some people would like to have more of an experience. And so when I talk about respect, you have to, if you want to learn something and you approach someone and they are not open to taking you on as a student, then you need to be respectful and you need to say, okay, I understand, thank you. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. And that goes for any school of thought, because as a student of Christopher Penczak, for example, he has the right to say, and he goes through, and there are, things that you have to fill out and questionnaires, and, it's not just a gimme that you go to him and say, I want to learn from you, and it happens. And he can say no. And the thing to do is you have to be respectful and say, okay, maybe there's something there that I'm not meant for.
Or not at this time.
Exactly. And so I think that has to be a part of the process too, is that yes, knowledge is power. Yes, we have a right to learn whatever we choose to. However, you might not be entitled to it for whatever reason.
Yeah, but that's not to say that you couldn't find someone else who is willing to teach you.
Right. But, I mean, there could come a time when after 50 no's,
you get it in your head that,
exactly.
Okay, not supposed to do this.
Right. So, and what does that mean then?
Right.
So, I mean, that's just kind of a thing that I think about when it comes to learning. And we have, as teachers, you and I, we have that
Well, yeah, because if you don't click with somebody, or if you don't think that person is going to take what you teach them and use it in a responsible manner, which could be the big problem with the Native Americans not wanting to teach white people, because white people have shown in the past to be very disrespectful of their belief systems. So,
and I think there's more to it than that as well.
But it might be part.
Right. So I feel like my thought process is kind of like jumbled, and I hope I'm making sense. So to kind of bring back my what I've talked about in my thoughts and stuff, I think that religious appropriation, I think you have to approach it in a manner that
is respectful.
Right, and it's gonna kind of be an individual thing. I think that the great thing and the hard thing about our chosen path is that it's so individualized.
Right.
And so we are our own connection to divinity. And so if you're meant to know something or learn something, then deity will open a door for you. But like I said before, don't think that
you're entitled to it.
Exactly. Just because you want to know doesn't mean that you should know. Just because I want to know the launch codes for the nukes doesn't mean that I should have them.
Right.
So.
And I know we're running long, but we didn't really go back to the other topic, which was how to teach someone who has already had some learning with other belief systems. Yeah, and
this is kind of one thing that I'm kind of dealing with a little bit right now. I have a student that I'm not teaching, but I am mentoring, and this individual obviously, this is a 101 class that I'm mentoring this person in, but they definitely have a lot of experience in some other things, not necessarily Wicca, and definitely not necessarily this tradition that we're dealing with. And so it's a subject that I'm kind of thinking about in how do I serve her well? You know,
because she already has techniques that she practices with and things that she does in her daily rituals and daily life that is different than what you're trying to teach her.
Right.
And how do you respect what she's already learned while still teaching her the new stuff?
Right. So that's kind of a struggle that I'm having. Do you have any suggestions for me or thoughts?
Well,
or whatever?
I think that when you took the 4th year with Christopher, there was a lot of ceremonial magic, and it's not something that you're really interested in following long term, but you had to learn it for the class. I believe that you said that he knew that it wouldn't be something that everybody would like and continue with, but it was something that you needed to learn just to get a well-rounded education.
Right.
So I think the same applies to this. It may be something different than what she's used to doing, but doing something differently is not always a bad thing. It can help her to learn things that can help her deepen her current practice.
But do you think that again, me being devil's advocate, do you think that there should be credit for time served?
Well, in a way, yes, but in another way, she knows the other way to do it, the other practices that she's been doing, but they may or may not apply to what she's learning now.
Yeah.
So if she skipped the 1st year class, then she might be skipping some very important information.
Right. Yeah.
Especially with the classes that you're taking, because you get a lot of supplemental information that is not in the books and is not available unless you take the classes.
Right.
And so by her taking the classes, she's able to get all that supplemental information.
Right. Yeah, just so I'm interested in what your thoughts out there, guys, are. Like, what's your opinion on what we've been talking about, and do you have a similar opinion? Do you think we're wrong? Do you think we're missing something? So that's what we kind of want to hear after you listen to this. So I think let's give that as the wrap up.
Right. So if you haven't liked our channel so far, please like us and review if you learned something or if you have an opinion, because this is kind of a controversial topic and we are interested in hearing what you have to say. And also, if you have any general questions, comments, or concerns about other topics that you want us to answer questions for, please start leaving those so we can start answering those. And we're kind of thinking about starting like a question-answer podcast episode or more.
Or answering a question or two at the end of each podcast.
Right. So it just depends on how many questions we get.
Yeah, I think we might have some that I need to kind of put together.
Ooh, bad girl.
But we did not plan on doing this.
No, we really
So I'm not a bad girl. So yeah, leave us a question and we'll try to answer them as we can. So yeah, I think that's all the business at hand.
Oh, no. You're missing. Don't forget you can find us on iTunes and PodOmatic, as well as on YouTube. And like, comment, subscribe. And I think that's everything.
Well, you kind of started to do that, so good job there. All right, that's going to wrap it up for us this time. Thanks for walking the path for a little while with us. And until next time, blessed be.